Imagine an ordinary peasant family, a father, a mother, and a son, living in the world of the Witcher. For the mother and son, life is a nightmare, as the father beats them every day. One night, as the father was returning home, he lost his way and stumbled into a nest of neckers. It seemed like the end for him, but a Witcher appeared and saved his life. However, the Witcher demanded payment for his services. The peasant had nothing on him, so the Witcher made an offer. "Give me the first thing you see when you enter your home." The man agreed and led the Witcher to his house, where the first thing he laid eyes on was his unwanted son. Without hesitation, he offered the boy as payment. The child, abandoned by his father, found himself in the hands of the Witcher, destined to walk the path of a monster slayer. As he stepped through the gates of the Witcher's stronghold, his past was left behind. Only the path ahead mattered, a path of grueling trials, where he would either survive and dedicate his life to the craft or perish. There was no third option. Upon his arrival, the elder Witchers needed to determine the boy's age. If he was younger than 8, he would be placed with other children to undergo a softer training course, exercises designed to prepare their young bodies for the future hardships ahead. These early lessons focused on agility, endurance, and mental fortitude. When he turned 8, or if he was already 8 upon arrival, he faced the most important and dangerous trial, the trial of the grasses. This trial was the very essence of what made Witchers who they were. It was notoriously brutal and agonizing, and many did not survive. The mortality rate was high, and only the strongest, or the luckiest, made it through. The boy was strapped to the table, as figures of renegade sorcerers and elder Witchers, those who possessed knowledge of mutations, began to appear around him. Then potions and mutagens started to be injected into the boy's body, one after another. His nerve endings ignited with unbearable pain, and his veins burned as the toxic mixtures flowed through his body. If the alchemical compounds were properly balanced, the first stage of the process was successful. Then came the second stage, the true transmutations. Stronger mutagens were used, causing radical changes in his body. His bone marrow transformed, his hormonal balance shifted, his skin grew pale, and his pupils changed in structure, becoming cat-like. If he survived, he awoke to an entirely new world. His senses sharpened to inhuman levels. Smells, sounds, and sights beyond human comprehension. Track a person by their scent alone. His body became faster, stronger, and more resilient. No disease could touch him, and he could never be blinded or lose psychological stability, as his emotions were dulled. However, he also became sterile, unable to have children. Now he was ready to face the true challenges of being a Witcher. Every day began and ended with grueling training. His diet now consisted of berries, herbs, and mushrooms that would be lethal to ordinary humans, essential for strengthening his immune system and completing his transformation. Ordinary wounds no longer mattered to him, as healing had become his second nature. He trained tirelessly in swordsmanship, dueling seasoned Witchers, and studied Witcher signs, a unique form of combat magic fueled by sheer willpower. His final trial was to imbue his Witcher medallion of his school with the power of the elements. He was given the medallion, and he had to reach the Circle of Elements, a journey that required him to survive a deadly ordeal. The children were sent into the swamps, teeming with drowners and foglets, a hostile environment full of monstrous threats. They had to make their way through, either by killing the monsters or carefully avoiding them. Their goal was to reach the lair of an ancient cyclops known as Old Grot. Here the children had to demonstrate either stealth or speed, as engaging the creature was ill-advised. The massive cyclops could kill in an instant. If it awoke, the only options were to run for their lives. But if someone got caught, there was no chance of survival. Mercy was not an option. Then the surviving children faced yet another challenge, the Troll's Head, a place inhabited by trolls. They had to choose their approach, negotiate with the creatures to pass peacefully without conflict, sneak past them unnoticed, or, if they were confident, fight. However, trolls were strong and fast, and if provoked, survival was nearly impossible. Negotiation was often the best choice, avoiding unnecessary risk to their lives. Gradually making their way forward, they finally reached the Circle of Elements, a sacred place pulsing with magical energy. Those who survived imbued their medallions with power, allowing them to react to magic and monsters. It was official, they had become Witchers. After that, they returned to Kaer Morhen, but Witchers only begin to go out into the open world at the age of 15 or 16. Until their teenage years, they train even more harshly than during all previous trials. Now enough time had passed. They were teenagers, fully ready to enter the big world. They received their gear, armor, some provisions, a few coins, and 2 swords, a steel one for humans and a silver one for monsters. Along with a horse for travel, they were now novice witchers, ready to forge their own path in the world. Arriving in the first village he came across, the fledgling witcher quickly realized that being a witcher was pure freelance work. No breaks, no stability. He had to seek out monster contracts, negotiate prices with clients who always tried to haggle him down a few crowns, and endure the scorn of people who despised witchers. They feared and hated them, believing them to be emotionless killers who would take a life without hesitation if necessary, or even without reason. Witchers were victims of deeply ingrained prejudices, treated no better than non-humans. Some even believed they should be burned just the same, despite the world already being full of real problems. In another village, where monsters roamed freely, devouring people, including infants, the witcher offered his services, only to be met with suspicious glares. The villagers were more troubled by his strange eyes than the creatures preying on them. One might think that monster hunting was a lucrative profession, but most of a witcher's earnings went into repairing gear, buying supplies, and acquiring herbs for potions. Witcher potions were, in essence, poison, voluntarily consumed toxins. Want to be faster? Drink poison. Want to see in the dark? More poison. Even with their mutated bodies, the experience was pure agony. Even kings constantly dragged witchers into politics. Though witchers don't take contracts to kill humans for money, if a king offered a high enough price, the witcher had no real choice, because it was simply more profitable. Witchers live and age far longer than ordinary humans, but not one of them has ever died peacefully in bed from old age. Every witcher meets their end, whether by the claws of a monster or the cruelty of fate. Even the greatest witcher could fall victim to misfortune, a beast far more dangerous than expected, a potion with unforeseen side effects, or even the hands of humans. A simple peasant's pitchfork driven into a witcher's back can be just as deadly. No matter how strong a witcher is, even they can perish to something as mundane as a farmer's tool. People think witchers are always battling epic dragons. In reality, they spend most of their time hacking down drowners in swamps and mutant rats in basements. The most interesting encounters likely involve vampires. Even for a fledgling witcher, fighting drowners is challenging enough, let alone facing higher vampires. Witchers don't work with other witchers. Each witcher operates alone. After all, why share a reward when he can demand a higher price for himself? Witchers are sterile, so they cannot have children. But when they take on a contract, the client may offer their child as payment, or sometimes the witcher himself may request such a payment. There are also cases where children volunteer themselves, wishing to become future witchers, often coming from poor families or as orphans with no one to care for them. A witcher who takes a child into his care brings them to Kaer Morhen, or to any other stronghold depending on the school, to be turned into a witcher. The only ones they can truly share their lives with are women who accept them as they are, or sorceresses, since they too are infertile. Yet most witchers have no friends, no companions, and certainly no lovers. Witchers live this way their entire lives. Some see it as their destiny, while others dislike it. They rarely think about becoming fishermen or merchants, as society is unlikely to accept them. For most people, a witcher is nothing more than a mutant who only cares about himself and never considers others. In the end, they may die at the claws of monsters, and no one will remember them.